Let God Find You, Chapter 5. I had a lot of odd jobs growing up, from scrubbing our neighbors' toilets to babysitting to tutoring. When I was 16 and old enough, I applied to a number of stores near our local shopping center. My dream job was working at Safeway, and because I was too young to be a cashier, Safeway hired me as a bagger. After a few months, I found an opening at the cafe across the street and discovered I liked being a hostess and a waitress even more. As a bagger, I loved talking with customers amid the hustle and bustle of the checkout line. I can't say that I was the best bagger, but I tried to be a friendly one, and my clients generously overlooked their disorganized shopping bags. If it was slow at the front of the store, I would wander through the aisles and offer to help customers with questions or check on displays. My coworker Kevin worked most late afternoons and evenings in the produce section stocking vegetables. Occasionally, we would discuss poetry or books since we were avid readers. At this point, I had been in counseling for several months and had already started taking medication, but I was still wrestling with what it meant to believe in Christ and be a Christian. I was going through a questioning phase of faith, but Kevin was a newfound Christian and was very studious in his desire to seek God. I know Jesus existed 2,000 years ago in person, but how do I experience him today? How do I find him? I asked. It's good to keep looking for him, Kevin said. But remember, more than you are looking for him, he's looking for you. The next day at work, Kevin had printed something out for me, a poem by English writer Francis Thompson called The Hound of Heaven. It begins, I fled him, down the nights and down the days. I fled him, down the arches of the years. I fled him, down the labyrinthine of ways of my own mind, and in the midst of tears. The poet went on to explain that, despite his best efforts, God still loved him and ultimately found him. Rise, clasp my hand and come. I didn't realize it then, but those words would come back to me in all their vivid imagery when I rediscovered my childhood faith over the next few years. I thought I had set out to find God, but now I could see that all along He was finding me. God is always searching for us. He is always inviting us to see Him, to see the world and ourselves in the light of faith in Him, to enter into the deeper currents beneath our everyday experience. But God does not force Himself on us. Out of love, He gives us the freedom to choose to acknowledge Him or not, to receive Him or not. No matter how much I thought that I was the one seeking God, all of my life, God was actually seeking me. And the cause I would find? No, it was He who gave it to me. Though I didn't see it at the time, He was with me in my darkest moments. He had been the source of my hope. Despite the reality of evil in the world, I knew there was goodness and that He offered Himself as the ultimate good. I saw Him in the faces of my siblings. I saw Him in the beauty of the star-studded sky in my backyard at night. Some say that faith is unreasonable and blind, that believing in a God who created the world is like believing in a magical genie. But I think it's more unreasonable to believe that this beautiful, extraordinarily complex world, populated by billions of unique designed human beings, is an accident, the result of total chance. I think it requires a suspension of reality and reason to argue that life on Earth somehow started on its own. Scientists are no closer today than they were a century ago to establishing even a halfway plausible theory as to how life on Earth might have begun without God. Some scientists are confident that they know how the universe started, but the prevailing theory, the Big Bang, begs the question of who or what generated the initial explosion. One of the laws of physics states that all matter comes from somewhere. It seems more reasonable to believe that an intelligent God set matter in motion than to believe that matter, with perhaps a sprinkling of fairy dust, somehow unleashed itself. According to philosopher Blaise Pascal's wager, the right bet was to believe God was good, loving, and all-powerful. Forget faith for a moment. Reason argues for a first cause. On every level, I was and remain convinced of this truth. Since I was a little girl, I have felt drawn to the truth of God's existence. I have had the belief that there is an all-powerful God who loves me and has a plan for me. This belief made me want to understand what that plan was. As I got older, I found myself doubting whether this God existed, whether I had value, and whether there really was a plan for my life. Still, Deep down, I had hoped that God had a specific purpose just for me, and I had a sense that the plan went beyond living a normal, quiet, white picket fence kind of life. I wanted my life to mean something. I wanted to help those around me and make a difference in the world. As I learned more and more about abortion and all its attendant problems, I asked God to find me. God, use me, I prayed. Use me somehow to save lives. I knew that for my faith to mean anything, I needed to make it the top priority of my life. If I was really going to follow Christ, I would have to honor his commandments and strive to be like him. My ultimate cause would be to share his gospel, the good news that in Christ there is salvation from sin and victory over death. This wasn't something I could do on weekends or as a side job. Following Christ had to take over my entire life. Any work I did had to be in service to him. The God I was trying to follow had endured the worst imaginable suffering and laid down his life in order to love me. Now, he was calling on me to pick up my cross and follow him. We are all in different places on our journeys with God. Maybe you wrestle with whether or not you believe God exists. Maybe you are still figuring out who God is, or maybe you have committed yourself to Christ. After I committed to follow Christ, I came to realize I had to change everything about the way I lived. God was not just the source of strength to live out my purpose and fight for my cause. To love and know God must be my ultimate purpose and cause. However important our chosen causes might be, we should ask ourselves, what is our ultimate goal? I realized early in my journey of faith that my end goal should not be to change myself or even change the world. Yes, these goals have value because they serve our final purpose, to live forever in union with God in heaven, and, by sharing the gospel, to bring as many souls as possible with us. And that ugly thing called suffering, that ever-present reality called evil, yes, even death itself, each would be forever vanquished by the all-powerful God we serve.